The big question that most people have is how do you relate to the Rebbe when you haven't seen him, you haven't interacted with him, you haven't personally had contact with him? It's like the difficulty of loving Hashem when you don't have a physical obstacle, an object. You're just loving conceptually, and the Rebbe says that when you say "V'ahavta Hashem Elokecha," you have to love like you love someone that you love physically. So to transcend that level of being able to integrate a feeling that comes from an intellectual commitment or from an understanding, not from a physical contact point, it's not such an easy process. So how does that happen? Because to me, it was very practical. Very many times, particularly in my own experience, fortunately, when I was a child, maybe 8 years old, I had an opportunity not only to come to Fabrengens, and not only to see the Rebbe in general from time to time, even though I lived in Toronto, until I came to Yeshiva at the age of 15, but we had a yechidus every year with the Rebbe. It was like a personal interaction with the Rebbe. And for my birthday, and for my Yom Beladis, I would get a letter from the Rebbe. And I got a letter even before my Yom Bar Mitzvah. I got a letter for Yom Beladis one time. So there was a very physical contact point. And all of a sudden, Gimmel Tammuz comes along. And there's a fundamental change in the process. You cannot say there's not change in terms of your own relationship, because there's something missing. In fact...
Can you describe yechidus?
To tell you, I'll describe the last yechidus I had. The early ones, I wasn't so conscious. I was a child. I was walking into the king. We prepared ourselves, we got dressed. It was like getting dressed for a wedding. It was an event to go to the Rebbe, to a yechidus. And we were very respectful, etc., etc. It's very interesting. I remember the first yechidus I had with the Rebbe as a child. When I was conscious, already 8 years old, I started learning Gemara. And the Rebbe asked me what I'm learning. I told him I learned Gemara. What did you learn? I learned Aleph Institute. So the Rebbe said, "Do you know part of it?" I said, "Yes." I happened at that time, I had a contest in the school. I happened to have studied by Baal Peh almost two amudim. One whole amud and 2 half amudim. So I said, "Tell me to start saying." The Rebbe says, I'm very shy. The Rebbe says, he's looking at me. I start saying. I don't know when to stop. So I figured, I said the Mishnah. The Rebbe's looking at me. Did I ever listen to my whole daf and a half? Yeah. The whole thing, he listened to me. From the beginning until the end. That was my first, but it was like standing in front of, not your principal, standing in front of a grandfather who's a king. It's like it's a really personal kind of feeling. It's a non-judgmental environment. You don't feel guilty in front of the Rebbe. You feel commanded upon, but not guilty. So you have that experience over and over again. The last yechidus I had, I was basically an adult. I was 36 years old. And it was an unusual yechidus. It was a very long yechidus. The yechidus at that time for 46 minutes. The Rebbe spoke about 99% of the time. He asked me a couple of questions. That was it. I thought it was a life-changing experience. But the physical way in which, to me, it felt, when I stood there, I was like transfixed, because I was looking at the Rebbe, and he was looking at me. And he was like, you were looking at the sun without sunglasses. It was like dazzling. You could not look continuous, but I forced myself. It was not a comfortable, it was like you're looking at something very extraordinary. And it's interesting that I saw.
You felt the same way by Fabrengen?
No, this was completely different. Any time I've ever interacted with the Rebbe, felt anything with the Rebbe, it was different. The reason being also because it was an opportunity that I would never have again. Have a yechidus with the Rebbe. There was no yechidus anymore. So this was already unusual. So I figured I'm not getting this again. I didn't know how long I was in there, to tell you the truth. The Bachar were outside. They kept track of how long I was in there. But I didn't. So I knew how long. But when I went into the Rebbe, I didn't know exactly what the agenda was. I prepared myself as best I could, which it's not that relevant what happened. But I tried. I had 2 weeks. When I came to the Rebbe, I decided that I was going to not ask for anything. Because, you have questions as time goes on. Experiences create different kind of issues, different kind of challenges. So what am I going to ask the Rebbe? Something. Tomorrow I'll have another question from the Rebbe. And the next day I'll have another question, another issue. So I decided, like Mr. Shragowitz said to me one time, either the Rebbe is a Rebbe or he's a murderer. Because otherwise, how can he tell you not to have surgery, or to have surgery? He has to take a life experience. So I said to myself, this is the Rebbe. This is not just coming in because with an important person who's a smart man who can analyze me. It's the Rebbe. I just wrote my name. Nothing else. Nothing else. Label, he gave me a hard time. He didn't believe it. He said, "Nicht lange brief." I said, "I'm not writing lange brief." Name. Let me see what you wrote. I said, "I'm not showing you." He says, "Nicht lange." I know that problem. I said, "Nicht lange." He's going to change. He's going to control who goes in now. He's like a doorkeeper. He's not the boss. But I didn't want to mess with him because I need his services too. So, and he's means to cover the Rebbe always. Doesn't mean for himself. So I said, in the distance, I'll show you. So I opened up my thing, took it out of my pocket, showed the distance. He says, "Come on." He checked my pockets, literally. He thought that was lying to him. I shared my thing. When I came to the Rebbe, it was very nice. And why did I say good love and Rabbi Sholom Dovber? He said, "Smile." And I gave him the letter. It's interesting to note that when I came into the Rebbe, every time he did this, but that time particularly, he was 36. I'd been on shlichus at that time for 11 years, 11 and a half years. I'd gone through a really very personally strong experience that the Rebbe was very aware of and followed me through that process. So I came in, I put the letter on, and said, from the door till the Rebbe. When I went into the Rebbe's room after Gimmel Tammuz, I never came in again. I never went in again. When I go with people, I take them to there, but I don't go in again. When I went into the Rebbe, from the door to the desk, it was 2 steps. When I would come for yechidus, the door to the desk was like a mile. And I thought to myself, perception recreates reality. I'm serious, that's how it felt. I felt like I'm walking to the Rebbe. It's not like I'm here. Yes, Mom was there. From the door, you could reach almost the desk, and so forth. So the Rebbe was looking at my letter. When I used to come to yechidus every year until Tov Shalom Ches, the Rebbe would write. That year it was like an annual yechidus, so it was like a summary. So I would write at least sometimes 4 or 5 pages, a summary of my duchim. I would write the Rebbe regular duchim. That was a summary of the duchim, and ask certain questions. The Rebbe had a pull-out table on his left side, and he had a tiny little pencil in his hand. He would turn the letter like this, and he would read it, mamish, like, just keep turning it. He didn't stop. He kept turning it, page after page, and in the middle of the page, he would make a check. Next page, make another check, or whatever, I don't know what he made there. And then he started talking, but hey, what this and this, that's usually how it happened. The longest I was in yechidus on a personal basis was maybe 9 minutes once. This time, the Rebbe looked at my letter, and he must have been for at least a minute or more, because he didn't yet start speaking to me when label came in to tell you to pull me out. I'm standing there, Rebbe didn't say a word to me. He was just looking at my letter. I found it, and the Rebbe, he kind of gave the young label, a look. I saw, I don't know, it was like just an eye blink. Label dropped my hands. He walked out. He never came back in.
Label came in to get you out.
Yes. Don't bother the Rebbe.
Right.
I'm sure he was. He did it properly.
You had no inkling why you were being called in?
I mean, no, not specifically. I mean, generally, I was doing some work there, I was aware of it, etc. I had many experiences that year with the Rebbe. I told you the Rebbe gave me many answers. I would ask him on a regular basis.
Personal or askanas?
Personal, that related to skanas, personal, that related to personal. For everything, my own thinking process. I'll give you an example. One time I asked the Rebbe after Fabringen, the Rebbe told a story about the Friedige Rebbe that he had to have a certain shlichus. So he went to the Rebbe intimated, it was like a bar. He went to a place that was very difficult for him to go to, but he had to fulfill the shlichus. And the reason that he was able to do it because he wore the hushim yechodim. So I figured that's a very relevant question because, we shluchim have often opportunities to go into spaces that maybe the troops like us would not go into a normal situation, whether it's the whole city of Las Vegas or Miami Beach at that time, whatever the case is. It was very relevant to me. So I asked the Rebbe, since we're in this kind of a situation, what's my level of shlichut? The Rebbe answered, Dvarim hamafsikim ve'ino yubein kol ha'olam kulei. That's what it said.
What's that mean?
Stuff, an attitude or clothing, whatever the clothing is, that separates you from the whole world. Makes you, for example, to come like a yid, to speak like a yid, don't participate in the dirty jokes. Speak like a chossid. Everything you take out of your mouth, you represent the Eibishter, you represent the Rebbe. No, shlichus, you have to understand shlichus. Take shlichus to the world to a certain degree. It's selfless, but it's also a career choice. People are searching for shlichus because they got nothing else to do, But that's a shlichus that Rebbe said it many times. It's not a question of self-worthiness. It's a question of responsibility. When you're a shliach, by definition, it means you represent the person who sent you. So when you interact with a balabas, anywhere, under any circumstances, to the balabas, you represent the Rebbe. You're not the Rebbe, but you represent him. Which means that if you say it, you must be kosher. So, anyways.
When you walked out of that yechidus,
Yeah.
feeling that this was going to be the last time, what was the feeling?
I told you it was a life-changing event to me. I had a whole new perspective of how to approach things in a different way, not different way. From that yechidus right away, I started the Shul. A few weeks later, I started the Shul. I started Aleph, and I started chossid. Those three institutions I thought were very relevant, very necessary, and were highly successful. I didn't sustain the chossid properly, which I should have, because I didn't have the funding. But on a regular basis in Miami Beach, I rented space. I had on a daily basis, every single day, 5 days a week, over 250 elderly Jews who would come to put on two shifts, at a mincha shift and a shachar shift. The shachar shift, I gave them a little breakfast. We put on film, the mincha shift on mincha and learning. And then we had a group for women. To me, my thought process was, Miami Beach is going to become a center for elderly people coming down to retire to learn. Because all of a sudden, it was filling up. What do they do here? After a while, you've told every joke to the old people. And I said, if they're still alive, they don't want to hear it again. Or you play bingo or mahjong. How long can you play bingo, You see, there's a share to everything. The appetite doesn't work anymore, so the food doesn't matter. So it's the mamish gave them a life again. And I would pay them $18 a week. Most of them would give us back the money after the end of the month, twice as much or 3 times as much. It wasn't the amount. It was, I'm valuable. That's what the Rebbe said. You give them the money, they feel valuable. They feel valued. Not uptight, an old man, he has nothing to do. So we started that program, and Aleph, the Rebbe was very much encouraging Aleph. I think it was the most encouraging to Aleph of any other thing I had. He would mention it consistently. To such a degree that the Rebbe sent me a personal check in Tafshin Membeis, signed by him for $3,000. They wrote to me. On the side of the check, it said, "Betur idud v'chat pa'ami," $3,000. Aleph mitzvah tefillin, Aleph mitzvah Pesach, Aleph Institute.
All for Aleph.
Yes. So I had the Rebbe's personal check with a signature in my name. To me, it was worth a lot more than $3,000. So to tell you how careful the Rebbe is and how involved he is, a few weeks later, Rabbi Chadikov calls me, and in this very sing-song tone, so, Mr. Baruch Hashem, Mr. Dafte nicht gegelt. I said, why do you say that? I don't have money to pay. Weil the darfst nicht gegelt, hat der Rebbe gesagt, so zurückschicken in the Machor. Send it back, you don't need it. I didn't send it to you to have to keep as a memento. As the Rebbe was very, anyway. So if you imagine, I could continue these stories, as I told you, as Pato said to you. He's been involved for 5 years, 6 years, 10 years, 12 years. I've been involved up in a shlichus. This is my 56th year in the shlichus. So it's a long time. You kind of go through every single experience that a person can have in life. You go through. Like my mother said, life is like a cardiogram. There's the ups and the downs. It's a flat line, it's over. You want a flat line, it doesn't work. You gotta have the ups and downs, so they are. So you can imagine that from a practical human point of view, it would be a very big, radical descent to not have the Rebbe anymore. I used to write a letter to get an answer. If I didn't get an answer, it was one time that I wrote the Rebbe a letter. That year that I did my study, the Rebbe gave me this opportunity as a temporary leave of absence. I used to come to every single Fabrengen. The funding that I got from various two sources, they paid for me to come to every Fabrengen. Wherever I was in the world, I would fly back for the Fabrengen. Every Shabbos, that Shabbos, take a look at Tafshin Mam Aleph. It's 4 bended as in I read them every week because it's got everything in it. Mam Aleph and Beis was wild. I never spoke about wild things. So I would ask questions on a regular basis. I would always get an answer. One time they would give me an answer. They didn't answer me. Not only that, but on Shabbos, he didn't answer me l'chaim. First one time. First, I got a little shaky. It was not the end of the world. It happened. I thought that I entered the Rebbe. I said, this things. Second week, again, no l'chaim. No answer. Now I know this is not Pashut. I saw the Rebbe, he went right by me. It's not like I didn't see me. Every Shabbos he sees me. By the third week, I read over it. Get an answer. So by the third week, so I have to write a letter to the Rebbe. I couldn't handle it. Couldn't deal with it. So I wrote it in a very respectful way, obviously, and the Rebbe answered me. And he answered me, it happened to be that I had written a paper, one paper I wrote, only one. And I sent it a copy to the Rebbe. It was not long, 22 pages. But what I sort of said to my conclusions in my study program, and I shared with the Rebbe. The person who funded me was a big philanthropist from Boston, Brandeis University, and myself had 3 copies. So the Rebbe says to me, after you write in your paper this and this, and I'd written a certain thing in one paragraph, I mentioned something. It wasn't, I just mentioned it and I didn't, this was not an original mention. Chacham mentioned it, the Gemara says, the Rebbe mentioned it to a certain degree. And I said, you put in the same paragraph this and this, and you expect me to answer you? Like a wild shot. Anyways, I got to fix it. I called my friend from Boston. He was in Israel. When he come back next week, I said, no, I need it today. I need the paper today. I went to Boston. I said, go to Boston. Went to Boston. His housekeeper told me exactly in the drawer, you'll see a file to the Sholom Lipskar. Fill out the file, that's for your papers. I went to Boston, flew to Boston, got the paper. Thank you very much, took the paper. Then I had my paper, and one day I said to the Rebbe, I got rid of this paper. I wrote to the Rebbe, the paper no longer exists. I took it away from the person who had it. They no longer exists. The Rebbe didn't answer me. That Shabbos, I was shivering in my pants because what I said to the Rebbe, I didn't say it clearly. I said that it's not fair because I don't have another Rebbe. I can't, if you drop me, man, what is it? You just drop me out of leave me fly in empty space. What am I supposed to do? So that job was a big test for me. So I'm standing there after the second sikha, I was a little cup, stood, pick it up, look at this. Just like that. Next to me was Dubrovsky. I was in the shul there. The Bach Dubrovsky. It was like this. They had, the big cups they had also in 770s. Big cups. So Itkin was a very nice guy. He offered, he pulled out one on the table a bottle of Zeklanitziger. Pours me a full cup of Zeklanitziger. I'll never forget that drink. It went down like vapor, not like liquid. I drank, the Rebbe was looking at me. The truth of the matter is, I don't know why, but that Fabrengen, after that time, I remember after making bread and I remember both Fabrengens. But I came home, I was gone. Anyway, so I'm just telling you the relationship. So after Gimmel Tammuz, that relationship changes to a certain degree, radically. So everybody asks you, what do you do now? So this is a very interesting perspective that I'm going to share because it fits, it works for me. And I know not only does it work for me, but it works for people in our community. Like this gentleman, Pato, that you talked to today, he believes it 100%, and you heard it in his voice. I thought to myself as follows. Pshuti. The Rebbe, his moment was by us a year. The Rebbe was medayik on Zman like nobody. I know, not like presidents, not like, he was medayik. 10 o'clock was 10 o'clock he came in. It was 1:30, he came in 1:30, not 1:32. One time he came late, the whole Maisa with prisoners, but the Rebbe was miyak Zman. So if you told a normal person that you told them that Einstein, the Mashal Chas v'Shalom, Einstein or Newton or someone like that, every single day for a year's time, because he wants to do something for a book, he goes to a grave for 6 hours every day. Stands by the grave for 6 hours. And he doesn't have Talmud there. He doesn't have a Talmud or Isaiah. He reads people's notes every single day. That in itself tells you this is real. Because the Rebbe was real. He didn't do anything upon him. He didn't say anything upon him. So the fact that the Rebbe went to the Eil on a regular basis tells me that there's something there that's real. And like the Tanya says, one side of the heart is crying, one side of the heart is joyful. That's the language. The Rebbe himself, as I mentioned to you, cried by the Frierdiker Rebbe. He cried by his mother. He cried by his wife. Didn't he communicate with them? I have a Meiser, a short little Meiser. There was a Yid in Miami. And this Yid was a Moroccan Jew. He was, I thought he was an Emes Mekum. He perhaps knew, and he learned Kabbalah, he learned the Rebbe's father taught him. He was a serious person. His children became Balchu, anyways. So he went to the Rebbe one time, and he didn't want to go because he said you can't take the time from the Rebbe, like roar to a certain degree. But he said that he came to the Rebbe. The Rebbe, he talked to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe told him he should come to go to the oil. So he was there for one day. So he said to the Rebbe, I'm leaving tonight. And should I go today? He said, the Rebbe said, yes, go today. It happens to be that I'm going also, the Rebbe said. When you come, you'll tell the secretary that I said that you come in. It won't be a problem, you can go in. Sometimes they didn't let people in when the Rebbe was there. Anyways, he goes to the oil. And he says that he walked into the antechamber and he hears voices talking. He hears voices talking. He's there, someone talking. It's like a dialogue going on. He said he got so scared he ran away. He says he couldn't go in. Partially could not go in. He asked the secretary, anybody else? He says, nobody else. Could not go in. I heard this myself from Rabbi Jacobson. Shalom Jacobson. Shalom Jacobson was the official Mashpia in Shul was official, but Jacobson was the like Mashgiach Mashpia in 770. So he was verbringen with us from time to time. He was a geschmackig first. He was a very geschmackig guy. He started out at in those years, the 60s. Very smart guy. He told us a story one day. But in the first years, the Rashag was not close with the Rebbe. The first month's year. The family was even worse, as continued until years later. To such a degree that Rashag never came to the Verbringens. The first Tosh Aleph, he didn't come to the Verbringens. Tosh Beis didn't come to the Verbringens. They boycotted it. He said there were a small group of idiots that stayed with him. And it was a big tsar for the Rebbe. But anyway, and the sisters. So all of a sudden, he started coming to Rabbi Engens. So Rabbi Jacobson was friends of his. I mean, buddies from where, he called Reb Shmedo. That's what he said. What happened to you? What happened to you? You were so strong, and all of a sudden, what happened? He says, from time to time, I have a dilemma. But the only one I could have discussed it with was the Shver, Friedrich Rebbe. He says, the Shvager can das, my brother-in-law can do that, I can't. So you're talking about something that's real. And then chossidus demands a liba d'nafshi. Chossidus is not a technical book, it's not an information center. It's how to live your life, it's how to feel your life, it's how to go through life. So it says in chossidus, yadam v'chayehu. It doesn't mean to say a euphemism. It's not trying to tell you, I say, this is not my srafim malachim emdim. They don't know what it is, as you know. This is not about angels. This is not about Ma'aseh Merkava. This is Poshek Pshuta Yatim Bechayehu that the Alter Rebbe says that he's here more than before. So to end this discussion, practically speaking, after Gimmel Tammuz was a very, very difficult process period for us, all of us. The mourning period was very, very difficult, very challenging. It was very confusing. We didn't know how to address it, how to deal with it, and so forth. But after some contemplation on the Rebbe's attitude to the oil, on the Alter Rebbe's statement, I started feeling in a practical way about the Rebbe more than I did before to the following degree. Before, I am yechidus, wrote a letter to the Rebbe, got a report to the Rebbe, I saw the Rebbe, whatever it is, the Rebbe. But my daily activity when I went to do shlichus, not always did I think of the Rebbe with me. Suddenly, I start to feel like every shlich, the Rebbe is pushing with him. Just like it says in Tanya Pshuta, that the Rebbe is here with us in a practical way, and I've seen it practically. I've had such many personal experience that I've seen things at the oil that are crazy stuff that you see at the oil with our balabata and with people in a practical way, as you just heard before. So the fact of the matter is that if we matured a little bit and we're able to enter into a dimension like a Jew has to be, the whole Jewish world woke up. We're at a tipping point of history. This is not a regular time. This is the time that every single Jew is opened up and saying, yes, who am I? Why am I? Because they woke up to fear, and they know that that's not the reason we're chosen to fight these idiots. There must be a deeper reason. So who am I as a Yid? They never had the notion of Am Kodesh. They have a notion of holiness. Sanctity, that concept itself, is a transcendent concept that doesn't fit into the human conduct. It fits into relationships. Yom Kippur is holy, but the human should be holy. That connects us with this beyond natural reality. And for a Jew for a person to understand our whole perspective, who we are, it's a whole different story. So when it comes 30 years, the Rebbe is right here with us, because the Rebbe is the father of our generation. As you can see, Goyim, like a Malay, is impacted by the Rebbe 30 years later, to such a degree that a president of a country goes against his diplomatic advisors to come to Oil to say thank you to the Rebbe, and he went against his diplomatic advisors to come to a Shul in Miami to speak. The president of a country, at a moment that is such an important time for him. And when they asked him, they told him, there's no way he should go. Every diplomat said no. Doesn't make sense. He says this is not a diplomatic journey, this is a personal journey, and so forth. So the Rebbe had that impact beyond of how we did. Why don't we deal with it that way? And the same way as a person that lives in a palace never appreciates the king. That's the meaning. But if we step back a little bit and we live life through the eyes of some of our Baalei Tshuva who go through life in a mature way, we'd be dancing and singing for having the opportunity to have a Rebbe who cares about us and whom we're connected to.